She arrived at the training camp with a small bag, a tired face, and eyes full of hope. Nobody knew her, but almost everyone judged her the moment they saw her. She was thinner than the others, shorter than most of the girls there, and her hands looked like they had never carried anything heavier than a school bag. The other recruits looked at her and smirked. Some didn't even hide their laughter. One boy whispered loudly, "She looks like a feather. Why is she even here?" Another one said, "She's going to last 2 days at most." And just like that, before she even took her first step into the field, she was already labeled dead weight. Her name was Aisha. She had waited years for this moment. She had dreamed of wearing the uniform ever since she was a child. But as she stood there, in front of the huge training ground, surrounded by confident and strong recruits, she could already feel something heavy pressing inside her chest. Not fear, but the pain of being judged before being known. The first day began, and the struggles came fast. Morning drills were brutal. Everyone had to run 5 kilometers carrying a heavy backpack. While others rushed ahead, Aisha was slow, breathing hard, trying her best not to stop. Her legs felt like stone. Sweat burned her eyes. She stumbled once and fell to the ground. No one helped her up. Some just watched. One girl laughed and said, "See? I told you she won't survive." She wiped the dirt from her face, gathered what little strength she had, and stood again. The instructor shouted at her not because she was weak, but because he wanted to see if she would break. Many before her had quit on day 1, but she didn't answer back. She just continued, step by step, breath by breath, until she reached the finish line, long after everyone else had finished. Lunch break was no better. She sat alone on the edge of the bench while others ate in groups, joking and chatting. She heard her name again. "She's a burden. She'll pull her team down. Why is she even here?" Every word hit her like a slap, but she kept quiet. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was control. She knew why she was here. They didn't. Then came physical strength tests. Push-ups, rope climbing, crawling under barbed wire, carrying sandbags. Aisha failed almost everything. Not because she didn't try, but because her body wasn't used to this kind of punishment. Her arms shook, her knees scraped, her palms bled, and each time she struggled, the whispers grew louder. One boy shouted in front of everyone, "Just quit. We don't need extra luggage in this camp." She didn't answer, but inside, something burned brighter. She wasn't angry at them. She wasn't even disappointed. She was angry at the idea that they could decide her worth without knowing her story, her pain, her reasons. When the day ended and everyone went back to their rooms, she didn't rest. She stood outside near the empty ground, staring at the sky that was slowly turning dark. The wind was cold, but her heart was burning. She remembered something, her father's last words before he died. "If you ever fall, don't stay down. Rise again. That's what soldiers do." That one memory was stronger than all the insults thrown at her. She went to the pull-up bar when no one was watching and tried again and again. She couldn't lift her body, but she didn't stop trying. She picked up stones and practiced carrying them as if they were sandbags. She ran small laps even though her legs were shaking. She fell many times, but she always got back up. The night became her secret training partner. She didn't want to prove the others wrong. She wanted to prove herself right. She knew she didn't join to be the strongest on day 1. She joined to become stronger every day, and that simple belief kept her standing. By the time she returned to her room, everyone else was asleep. Her body was sore, her feet were swollen, and her uniform was still dirty. But when she lay down, she didn't feel defeated. She felt ready. They all saw her as dead weight. A problem, a mistake, a waste of space. But no one knew that the one they underestimated was the one who had already promised herself she would never quit. Not for anyone, not for any insult, not even for pain. And that was how her journey began. Not grand, not victorious, but silent, lonely, and fierce. Because sometimes the strongest soldiers aren't the ones who start strong. They are the ones who refuse to stay weak. The second day of training began before sunrise. A loud whistle cut through the early morning silence, and all recruits rushed out of their rooms. Some looked fresh and confident, while others looked sleepy. But Aisha? She looked tired, because she had trained secretly the whole night. Still, she stood straight, refusing to show weakness. The instructor announced the schedule for the day, something called the survival circuit. It was a series of difficult challenges, one after another, meant to test strength, speed, stamina, and teamwork. For most recruits, it was just another hard training day. For Aisha, it felt like a mountain standing in front of her. The first challenge was rope climbing. One by one, recruits climbed up with ease. When Aisha's turn came, some smiled in amusement. They expected her to fail. When she grabbed the rope, her arms shook, her grip slipped, but she still tried. She made it halfway and fell. Laughter followed. A boy shouted, "Dead weight strikes again." She got up, dusted her hands, and walked to the next station without defending herself. That silence bothered them more than words ever could. Next came crawling under wires with mud beneath. Aisha moved slowly, her elbows sinking into the dirt. Other recruits finished early and stood watching her. She heard jokes again. "She's slower than a snail. She'll never survive real war." But she kept going until she crossed the line, covered in mud but not broken. Then came the heavy log carry. For people were supposed to lift one log together. When teams were formed, no one wanted her in their group. They thought she would make them lose. Finally, the instructor forced a team to take her. The moment they lifted the log, the others shouted at her, blaming her for being weak even before she tried. The log was heavy. Her shoulders burned. Her arms trembled. But she pushed anyway, using every bit of strength she had. The team finished last, and instead of supporting her, they yelled, "You're dragging us down." Aisha didn't cry. She didn't shout back. She just walked away with a calm face and a tired body. But inside, her heart was hurting. Not because of the pain, but because of how quickly people judge someone without knowing what they carry inside. During a short water break, she sat alone again. This time someone walked up to her. Not a friend, not a recruit, but an instructor. He didn't smile. He didn't show sympathy. He only said, "Everyone fights a different battle. If yours is harder, it means your victory will be bigger." Then he walked away before she could reply. Those words lit a small fire inside her. The final test of the day was a timed obstacle run. Tall walls, trenches, barbed wires, ropes, and ditches. Everything was meant to break both body and spirit. Some recruits joked that Aisha would take an entire day to finish it. She ignored them. The whistle blew. Everyone ran. Aisha ran too, slowly at first, but with determination. She fell many times, but she got up each time. She struggled to climb the wall, but she didn't stop trying. Her knees were bleeding, her palms were scratched, her arms numb, but she didn't give up. Halfway through the course, almost everyone else had already finished. Some recruits stood on the side watching her. They didn't cheer, they didn't help. They just watched, waiting for her to fail completely. But something unexpected happened. On the last obstacle, where she had to jump over a deep trench, her foot slipped and she fell hard. The recruits laughed, thinking she would finally quit. But to their surprise, she pushed herself up, limping, breathing heavily, and tried again. And this time, she made it. She completed the whole course. Last, slow, exhausted, but she finished. No one clapped. No one said, "Good job." But the instructor, the same one who spoke to her earlier, looked at her for a few seconds longer than usual. There was respect in his eyes, silent but real. When the day ended, Aisha walked back to her room with sore muscles and tired eyes. But there was something new inside her, pride. Not because others accepted her, but because she accepted her own strength. Everyone still thought she was weak. Everyone still believed she was a burden. But they didn't know she had already started winning the war inside herself. The war against doubt, fear, and humiliation. And that was the real battle. Because someday the same people who laughed would stand in silence. Someday the same ones who ignored her would salute her. But she didn't know that yet. She only knew this. She wasn't here to look strong. She was here to become strong. The third day began with the same cold wind, same loud whistle, and the same set of confident faces, except one face was different. Aisha's eyes looked tired, but there was something new in them, quiet fire. The others still saw her as a weak girl struggling to survive, but no one knew the reason she still hadn't given up. No one knew what she carried in her heart, a promise that was heavier than any weapon, any backpack, any insult. Aisha didn't come to this camp just to join the army. She came because of her father. Her father was a soldier, strong, brave, loved by his team, respected by his commander. When Aisha was a child, she would sit on his lap and listen to his stories about loyalty, courage, and sacrifice. He never taught her to fear pain. He taught her to stand up after pain. He used to say, "A soldier doesn't fight because he hates what's in front of him. He fights because he loves what's behind him." But one day he never came back home. Aisha was only 12 when two officers came to their door, holding a folded flag. Her mother fainted. Aisha just stood there, frozen, staring at the flag. The same flag her father had promised to protect. She didn't cry that day. She couldn't. She didn't even understand what martyr meant. But she understood one thing. Her father never ran away, even when life gave him reasons to. She kept his uniform. She kept his watch. And she kept his last words. "One day, if you ever wear this uniform, don't let it wear you. Earn it." Years passed. People told her to forget the idea of being a soldier. They told her she was too soft, too small, too emotional. They told her 100 reasons why she couldn't. But inside her, one voice kept saying she must. That was the voice that brought her to this camp. That was the voice she heard every time someone called her dead weight. That was the voice that said, "Don't break. Not yet. Not ever." But no one knew this. Not the girls who laughed at her. Not the boys who rolled their eyes whenever she failed. Not the team who refused to include her. They saw a weak girl. She knew she was a seed. During the afternoon training, something happened that reminded her of her father again. A senior officer was giving a speech about discipline and honor. While others just listened casually, Aisha stood straighter, her hand unconsciously touching the old chain she wore around her neck. A chain that held her father's army tag, hidden under her shirt. One recruit noticed it and said loudly, "Why do you stand like a soldier when you can't even train like one?" A small laugh followed. Aisha didn't speak, but inside, her heart whispered, "Because I am not standing for myself. I am standing for the one who raised me to never bow." Training moved to weapon handling. For the first time, everyone was given a rifle to practice holding and aiming. Most recruits got excited. They posed with confidence, joked about shooting targets. Aisha held the gun differently, not for power, not for pride, but with respect. She had seen this same type of rifle in her father's hands when she was young. Her grip was steady, her eyes focused. For the first time, she didn't look weak. She looked like someone who belonged there. An instructor noticed. He didn't say anything, but he stared at her a little longer before moving on. That day, during lunch, something unexpected happened. A girl from the camp sat beside her. Not a friend, not an enemy, just someone curious. She asked softly, "Why don't you quit? No one would judge you if you left." Aisha looked at her and smiled. A soft, tired, but confident smile. "I didn't come here to be accepted. I came here to become what I promised." The girl didn't understand fully, but she felt something in those words. Something deeper than muscles and medals. Evening fell and everyone went to rest. But again, Aisha didn't sleep early. She went outside and trained quietly, repeating the same exercises she failed earlier. Her feet hurt, her arms were shaking, but her mind was stronger than her pain. She remembered her father's salute. She remembered the folded flag. She remembered the silence in the house the day he left forever. And she whispered to herself, "One day, I will earn the salute he never got to see me receive." That night, the moon watched her. The cold wind pushed against her. But she didn't stop, because she wasn't training her body anymore. She was training her soul. And the world was still laughing at her. But that laughter would soon turn into silence. Because some people are not loud when they rise. They rise slowly. quietly. But when they finally stand, the whole world has no choice but to stand with them. The fourth day began like every other day, but something had changed inside Aisha. She was still the weakest in the camp, still the last one to finish every drill, still the one people avoided during team tasks, but now she had stopped expecting fairness from others. She didn't want help anymore. She wanted strength. The morning started with weapon assembly practice. The instructor dropped several parts of a rifle on the table and said, "A real soldier doesn't just carry a weapon. They understand it. You have 3 minutes to assemble it." The recruits rushed. Some did it fast, some made mistakes and panicked. Aisha moved slowly but carefully. She remembered how her father once showed her how a rifle was more than metal. It was responsibility. Her hands were shaking at first, but her focus was sharp. She didn't finish in time, but she completed it without a single wrong step. The instructor looked at her with a surprised expression. That was the first time someone noticed she was not weak in everything. She wasn't the fastest, but she was learning. Still, the others didn't care. They only noticed what she failed in, not what she improved in. During physical training, the group had to do partner push-ups. No one wanted her. Girls made excuses, boys avoided eye contact. In the end, she was paired with the instructor himself because nobody chose her. That moment hurt more than the exercise itself. But she didn't show it. When they started, she struggled again. Sweat rolled down her face, her muscles trembled, her elbows slipped on the hard ground. But the instructor didn't scold her this time. He simply said in a low voice, "You don't need to beat them. You just have to beat the old version of you." And she did one more push-up, then another, then another. Slow, shaky, painful, but hers. After the drill, others walked away laughing, talking about lunch, boasting about their strength. Aisha walked to the corner of the ground and sat alone. She didn't cry. She never cried in front of them. But her silence was full of all the things she wished she could say. She wanted to say, "Judge me after you know my story." She wanted to say, "I may be weak today, but you won't always see me this way." She wanted to shout, "I am not dead weight. I am becoming the weight that holds me up." But she said nothing. She drank water, stood up again, and went to train by herself. That became her daily routine. When the camp slept, she trained. When the lights went off, she ran in the dark. When others rested, she pushed harder. She tied sandbags to her legs and practiced climbing. She lifted rocks while repeating her father's words in her mind. She did push-ups until her arms gave up, then did one more. Her hands got blisters. Her nails broke. Her shoulders ached so much she could barely lift her arms the next day. But she kept going. And someone was watching. Not a friend. Not a recruit. But the same instructor who had quietly respected her since day one. One night, he walked up to her and said, "Why are you training when no one will see it?" Aisha answered softly, "Because I'm not doing it for applause." The instructor stared at her for a moment, then nodded and walked away. No praise, no long speech. But the respect in his eyes was worth more than any medal. The next morning, when the group had to run with 20 kilograms bags on their backs, Aisha still came last. But this time, she didn't collapse. She finished standing. People noticed, but they still pretended not to. Their pride didn't let them admit she was improving. During lunch, the same boy who mocked her earlier said loudly, "Even if she finishes last every time, she's still useless." Aisha didn't react. But another girl, the one who once sat beside her, looked at the boy and said, "At least she doesn't quit like some people." The boy fell silent. A few heads turned. Something was changing, not outside, but inside the people watching her. They didn't respect her yet, but they had stopped laughing so loudly. Because every time they mocked her, she didn't fight back with words. She fought back with progress. And progress is louder than insults, just slower. That night, while others slept, Aisha stood under the sky again, looking at the stars. Her body was tired, her bones were heavy, but her heart was strong. She whispered to herself, "One day, they will not remember how many times I failed. They will remember that I never stopped trying." She didn't know it yet, but that silent effort, that unseen strength, was already building the moment when even the commander would stand straight in front of her. Great change doesn't scream. It grows. Slowly. Quietly. Until the whole world has no choice but to notice. The fifth day was different from every other day before it. There was no normal drill, no simple exercise, no routine training. That morning, the recruits were told they would face a real survival mission. Not a classroom lesson, not a practice run, but a situation that would test who could stay calm, who could lead, and who could survive. The instructor announced, "Today is not about speed or strength. It's about how you think, how you act, and how you protect your team." Everyone looked confident except Aisha. She stayed silent, not because she was scared, but because she knew this was the kind of test where people like her were expected to fail. The recruits were divided into groups of 6. Aisha's name was called last. No one wanted her in their group, so she was placed into the team that already had 5 strong members, the same people who had laughed at her since day one. The mission was simple on paper, but difficult in reality. Cross a long forest trail, protect a dummy, injured soldier, and bring him back to base within limited time, without losing supplies or leaving any teammate behind. The team picked up the stretcher with the dummy soldier. Everyone carried weight, except Aisha. They didn't even let her try. "Don't touch it, you'll just slow us down," one boy snapped. "Just walk behind us quietly," another added. Aisha didn't argue. She simply followed. First, everything went smoothly. The group was ahead of others, moving fast, confident, laughing, bragging. But then, they reached a narrow path covered in mud and rocks. One of the boys carrying the stretcher slipped and twisted his ankle badly. He cried out in pain. The stretcher dropped. The dummy fell. The whole team panicked. Their speed was gone. Their confidence was gone. One boy said, "Leave him here, we'll come back later." Another said, "We don't have time. Forget the rules." Someone suggested, "Let him walk himself. We can't carry both him and the dummy." They were breaking not physically but in discipline and loyalty. That was the moment Aisha stepped forward. She didn't shout. She didn't look angry. She just said, "We don't leave a soldier behind. Ever. Injured or not." The team looked at her, shocked, like a weak recruit had no right to speak. But she didn't wait for permission. She went to the injured boy, lifted his arm over her shoulder, and tried to pull him up. Her body shook. Her muscles burned. But she didn't stop. The others watched, confused. One boy said, You think you can carry him?" Aisha didn't reply. She took the weight again, and slowly, step by step, she started dragging him forward. Her breathing turned heavy. Her legs trembled. The boy she carried was almost her size, but she didn't care. Sweat dripped from her face, but her eyes stayed strong. Then something unexpected happened. The other recruits, the same ones who always mocked her, went silent. They had strength in their arms, but not in their heart. She had both. One by one, they slowly began helping. Not because they wanted to, but because her effort made them ashamed of their words. They lifted the stretcher again. Aisha walked beside them, supporting the injured boy, never letting go. The journey back was slow, difficult, painful. They were no longer first, but they were a team now. When they finally reached the base, the commander was waiting. He looked at each of them, then pointed at the injured recruit and said, "Who carried him?" Everyone turned their eyes to Aisha. There was no cheering, no clapping, just silence, the kind of silence that comes when truth punches ego. For the first time, the team didn't call her weak. They didn't call her dead weight. They didn't even speak. Because they knew. If she wasn't there, they would have failed. She, the girl they called useless, was the only one who remembered the real meaning of being a soldier. That evening, the same recruits who once ignored her now looked at her differently. They didn't apologize, they didn't thank her. But their eyes carried something new. Respect, the quiet kind, the real kind. Aisha sat alone again that night, but this time, it didn't feel lonely. She had proven something without shouting, without fighting back, only by doing what others were afraid to do. She looked up at the sky and whispered to herself, "They still don't know who I am. But today," they started to understand. She didn't know it yet, But this mission was the first step that would lead to the moment where even the commander would stand before her. The sixth day didn't begin with mocking or laughter like before. Something had changed in the air. The recruits who once made fun of Aisha didn't speak to her, but they no longer laughed when she walked by. They didn't smile, but they also didn't whisper dead weight behind her back anymore. Silence had replaced insults, and silence is the first sign of respect. But respect wasn't her goal. She didn't wake up thinking about what others thought. She woke up with one thought only: I have to become better than yesterday. The mission from the previous day stayed in everyone's mind. The instructors already knew what had happened. Word spreads fast in camps. They knew the weakest recruit had carried the injured one when the strongest recruits gave up. They knew she had done what real soldiers do: protect, not abandon. But no one praised her. No one handed her a medal. Because in the army, true strength doesn't need instant applause. It is remembered when the right moment comes. That morning, the recruits were told there would be a final confidence test. A difficult, dangerous obstacle that decides who is truly ready for the next level of training. It wasn't about speed. It wasn't about muscles. It was about courage, decision-making, and heart. The test was simple to hear but terrifying to face. Each recruit had to cross a high wooden bridge, hanging above a deep rocky ditch, blindfolded. They would have only a rope to guide themselves, and only their own mind to stop them from falling. Some recruits pretended to be fearless. Some joked, but their nervous eyes told the truth. Even the strongest were shaking on the inside. When Aisha stepped forward, no one joked this time. They remembered the injured soldier she carried yesterday. They remembered her silence. For the first time, their mocking had turned into curiosity. They wanted to see what she would do. She put on the blindfold. She held the rope. She took a breath. The instructor shouted, "Go!" Aisha took her first step, slow, careful, unsure. She couldn't see anything. She could only feel the wind, hear the voices below, and sense the shaking of the bridge. Any wrong step could make her fall. Her feet trembled, but her heart didn't. She remembered her father's voice again. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is walking forward even when fear is screaming inside you. Step by step, she moved forward. The recruits watching her didn't blink. Her body was not strong, but her focus was strongest in that moment. Halfway through the bridge, the wind grew stronger. The bridge shook. Some recruits had already failed before her. They screamed and were pulled up by the safety rope. But Aisha didn't stop. She didn't scream. She held the rope tighter and said in her heart, "I didn't come this far to fall now." And then, she did something no one expected. She stopped. Not because she was scared, but because she wanted to feel the bridge, the wind, the balance. She waited until the shaking slowed, and continued. She crossed the whole bridge, blindfolded, without falling, without crying, without fear taking over. When she reached the end, some recruits actually clapped. Not loudly, not like fans, but with small, honest respect. Even the ones who hated her looked stunned. But the moment that truly shocked everyone came next. The strongest boy in the camp, the same one who called her dead weight on day one, failed the test. He screamed, slipped, panicked, and froze before even reaching the middle. He had strength, power, muscles, but no control over fear. The same instructor who used to ignore Aisha's efforts now looked at her like she was someone entirely different. He didn't smile, didn't praise, but he nodded. That one nod was bigger than any compliment. The other recruits didn't know what to say. They had spent days judging her body. Now they were forced to see her mind. And that was far stronger than they ever expected. Later that evening, when everyone was free, something unbelievable happened. No jokes about her. No insults. No laughter when she passed. Just silence, and eyes that were forced to respect what they once hated. Aisha didn't walk proud. She didn't act better than anyone. She simply picked up her water bottle, sat under a tree, and breathed deeply. She had fought no one, but she had defeated everyone's idea of her. Because strength is not only about lifting weight. Sometimes, real strength is carrying yourself through fear, and still moving forward. The camp didn't know it yet, But the girl they once rejected was slowly becoming the example everyone would remember. And the commander himself was already watching her, waiting for the right moment. The moment when the whole camp would stand frozen, as he saluted the girl they once called dead weight. The morning after the rescue mission, Aisha woke up with soreness in her arms and legs, but her heart felt calm for the first time in a long while. She had proved herself, not with words, not with arguments, but with actions. The soldiers who once mocked her now moved aside when she walked past. Some even nodded silently, unable to meet her eyes because of the guilt they carried inside. Aisha did not hate them. She had suffered because of their words, but she had not broken. Their insults had pushed her down, but her courage had lifted her back up. In the dining hall, the same soldiers who used to whisper behind her back now sat in silence when she entered. Aisha picked up her food tray and walked to an empty table as she always did. But this time she was not alone for long. One of the young soldiers, the same one who had once laughed at her during training, came and sat across from her. He did not know what to say at first. His hands shook slightly as he tried to speak. Finally, he managed a simple sentence. "Thank you for saving me." Aisha looked at him. His eyes were full of shame. She nodded softly and replied, "Next time, save yourself. Believe you can." The boy was shocked. He expected anger, maybe revenge, but instead he found kindness. That single moment changed him. He understood something that day: strength was not just in muscles or loud voices. Real strength was in the heart. Soon, more soldiers began to respect Aisha. Not because they were forced to, but because they had seen what she was capable of. The nickname "dead weight" disappeared. They no longer mocked her behind her back, because now they knew she carried the kind of weight no man in that room could carry. The weight of courage, silence, and dignity. But the biggest change was happening outside the camp. News of the rescue mission had spread. The higher command had received a detailed report from the officer who witnessed everything. The report mentioned how Aisha saved not one but two soldiers, how she stayed calm under fire, how she refused to leave anyone behind, and how she walked back injured but unbroken. The commander of their division, a strict and decorated officer, read that report twice. He had never met Aisha, but her name stayed in his mind. A young female recruit with no special background, no military family, no influence, and yet she had done what even trained male soldiers could not. He made a decision then. The entire battalion would assemble the next morning. By evening, the whole camp was talking about it. No one knew the reason for the sudden assembly, but everyone could feel something big was coming. Aisha went back to her room, confused. No one had told her anything. She just thought maybe it was a normal announcement or training update. She did not know that the next day would change her life forever. That night, she sat on her bunk and cleaned her boots slowly. She looked at the bruises on her arms. They hurt, but they reminded her she was still standing. She didn't feel like a hero. She just did what her heart told her to do. She had always believed that being strong did not mean being loud. It meant being unshaken, even when the world tried to break you. Before sleeping, she thought of her mother, the woman who once told her, "If they cannot see your worth, don't argue. Just keep walking. One day, they will see it themselves." That day had almost arrived, but Aisha still did not know. The next morning, a loud whistle echoed across the base. Soldiers rushed to the field in formation. A stage and microphone were set up. Something felt unusual. Even the officers stood straighter than usual. When Aisha arrived, a few soldiers quietly stepped aside to make space for her. No one pushed her to the edge of the row. That itself was a silent apology. Then the jeep arrived. The division commander stepped out. His uniform carried more medals than most soldiers had ever seen. He walked with authority but without arrogance. His eyes scanned the rows, and then he spoke. "There is someone among you who has shown what real bravery looks like. Someone you underestimated. Someone you insulted. Someone who proved that strength does not come from size, gender, or loud words." Aisha felt her heartbeat slow down. She sensed something, but she still did not look up. The commander continued, "Step forward, recruit Aisha Khan." The entire field froze. No one moved. Every eye turned toward her. And slowly, she stepped forward. Not proudly, not fearfully, but calmly. The commander looked at her, then did something no one expected. He raised his hand and saluted her in front of everyone. When the commander lifted his hand in salute, the entire field went silent. No one had expected this. A salute from a commander was not a small gesture. It was a sign of the highest respect, a respect normally given to war heroes, decorated officers, or soldiers with years of service. And now, it was given to Aisha, the same girl they once mocked as dead weight. Aisha stood still, unsure of what to do. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she forgot how to breathe. She had trained to salute officers all her life, but no one had ever saluted her before. Slowly, with trembling hands, she returned the salute. Not because she wanted attention, but because she respected the honor she was being given. The commander spoke again, this time louder, so every soldier could hear clearly. You all thought strength was in muscles, in speed, in loud voices. But this girl showed you something greater. She showed courage. She showed loyalty. She showed what a true soldier looks like. A few soldiers lowered their heads in shame. They remembered how they laughed at her, how they ignored her, how they treated her like a burden. And now, the same girl was being honored in front of the entire battalion. The truth hit them hard. She was always stronger than them, not on the outside, but on the inside. The commander continued, a soldier is not measured by how heavy they can lift, but by how much they can carry inside their heart. She went into danger when others froze. She saved the lives of her teammates. She came back injured, but she came back standing. Then he turned to the officers and said, make sure her name goes into the record. This moment should not be forgotten. Aisha stared at him, her eyes slowly filling with tears. Not tears of pain, but of relief. For years, she had been fighting a silent war. Not against enemies, but against doubt, judgment, and disrespect. Today, that war had ended. She had won without shouting, without proving anything to anyone, except by being herself. The commander stepped closer to her and handed her a small medal. This is not for bravery alone, he said. This is for changing the meaning of strength for everyone standing here. The medal was light in her hand, but it felt heavier than her past. She looked at it, then closed her fingers around it slowly. She was not just wearing a medal. She was wearing her story. When she turned around, she saw something she never thought she would see. The same soldiers who once insulted her now stood straight, eyes filled with respect. Some even raised their hands and saluted her themselves. Not because they were told to, but because they finally understood her worth. The young soldier she rescued stepped forward with tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered. Aisha didn't say much. She just nodded and said, be better. That was all. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need an apology for ego. She wanted growth in herself and in others. That day changed the camp forever. The jokes stopped. The whispers stopped. The idea that women were weak ended. Aisha had not only saved lives, she had changed minds. News of the salute spread far beyond the camp. Other battalions heard about it. Her story reached military pages, newspapers, and even online platforms. People were shocked when they learned the truth. A girl who was mocked for being useless had become a symbol of strength. But Aisha did not let fame change her. She still woke up early, tied her boots, ate in silence, and trained just like everyone else. She never acted superior. She never reminded anyone of what they did to her. Her victory was not in making others feel small. It was in proving that she was never small. Months later, new recruits joined the base. They heard stories about a female soldier who had been saluted by the commander. When they saw her, they didn't see a weak girl. They saw a legend. They saw someone who fought her battles with heart, not with anger. One evening, Aisha stood alone on the training ground as the sun set. The sky turned orange, the wind was calm, and the world felt quiet. She closed her eyes and smiled, remembering every moment. The pain, the insults, the self-doubt, and finally, the salute. She had walked a long, heavy road. But the weight she carried made her stronger, not weaker. And now no one would ever call her dead weight again. She had turned their insults into her story. She had turned their doubt into her strength. And in the end, the world saluted her.